During this age of Mario's life, it had already become obvious that Mario was a popular, iconic character, and in order to capitalize on its success, Nintendo got to work planning licenses, and one of its ideas was an educational game series, alongside future RPG, racing, and sports games. The reason behind it is that I assume Nintendo wanted to ingratiate children into the Mario fandom a lot better with school-accepted DOS games, but then it doesn't make any frickin' sense why Nintendo thought it was a good idea to port this to the NES and the SNES. Yes, seriously, this edutainment game got 4 different ports. What a crazy world the early 90s was. The main point of this game was to use the Mario series in order to teach children about cultural history, where Luigi would travel to different real-world locations in order to collect artifacts that Bowser's army stole, but then paradoxically order them to mill around the city, inside of which they are thieves, because even though this world has policewomen in it, they needed a brave plumber to actually step up and get the job done in arresting these guys. Then, once Luigi gathers the stolen artifacts, he has to return them to receptionists and answer questions about the monument, since this world, while having no time to capture heinous thieves, are real goddamn wary of forgeries. I suppose this makes sense, since they're offering $1,000 rewards for returning them? The questions are the only educational component to this game, and they aren't educational tools, since it basically boils down to taking the information from the pamphlet to the fill-in-the-blanks 2 seconds later, which gets real frickin' galling when the questions start showing up that aren't answered by the provided information, which is like having to figure out what's the capital of Cambodia on a math test. And even if you fail these questionnaires, you're allowed to try again in 30 seconds, and the only reason Software Toolworks requires you to do that is because the game's on an invisible time limit, because, as we all know, the only people who get 100% on tests are the ones who finish first. After the player beats 5 worlds, they're then faced with the horrors of taking on the military might that is one of the Koopalings, in a harrowing challenge of watching them run around the room and stomping on them with no threat of getting hurt whatsoever. The boss fights, in giant quotes, that Software Toolworks put in are completely useless, stupid, and simply wastes of code and time that the game would have been much better off had they not been implemented in the first place. This being an educational game, the plot is frankly insulting, since Bowser somehow captures Mario, but then lets Luigi have free roam of his entire Antarctic castle, and he's defeated because he left his Doomsday Cannon unattended and dropped straight into it out of nowhere. Then there's the flagrant use of Nintendo's assets in order to make this game to the point that Super Mario World should have been put in the credits as a developer, because more than half of this game isn't original. But what can you expect from a first-time developer who is just looking for a hook to put around their educational game idea in order to sell copies? The game doesn't change at all, and you're stuck doing the same random artifact gathering, Yoshi calling, and receptionist pandering for the whole game, which doesn't even last 2 hours, and then the game finishes in a dumbass cutscene that has no purpose for anything. I know that people call this Luigi's first game as the main character, but considering he's just a green-skinned Mario sprite, I wouldn't give him even that much credit, since he beat Bowser completely on accident. It's a boring game through and through that doesn't engage the player at all, and ultimately fails as an educational game. If you wanted to play it for whatever reason, I'd suggest getting the DOS version, since that one had proper work sunk into it with a proper sprite for Luigi, better locations, more features, the whole 9 yards, while the SNES version was the failed field goal. So with that horrible analogy over, here's the final score. And I'll leave you guys while I deal with the next off-brand Mario game with a victory for gamers. See you around.